Hey everyone, Kevin from mechanicalvantage.com. Today I wanted to do a video on how to model a Phillips head screwdriver. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to jump right into it. The first thing I'm going to do with this file is save this. I'm going to hit the save, and I'm going to give it a name, and I'll just call it screwdriver. And I'm going to hit save in that location right there. That'll work for me. And now I'm going to do a couple things before I get started. I want to create two parameters. So from the modify menu, I'm going to go and choose change parameters. And when this menu comes up, I'm going to hit the plus. And the two parameters I want to call are going to be handle height. And I'll give this a value of 2 inches. And I want to do another one of shaft height. And I'm going to give this a value of 2.25 inches. And I'll hit OK. Now we really should answer comments about what these do. I'm going to skip that for the video, and I'll hit OK. We'll reference those parameters later on in the design process. I know I'm going to have a handle component, and I know I'm going to have a shaft component. So right off the bat, I'm going to start off by creating components. And there's a couple ways you can do this. You can go to the assemble menu and choose new component. And because this is the way it's been done in Fusion for a long time, it's my muscle memory. A lot of times what I do is right click on my design name and I choose new component. I'm going to use a standard component, and the name of this component is going to be handle. It's going to be underneath the parent, which is the design, and it's going to be activated once I hit OK. The other thing I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to go to the assemble menu and do an as build joint. And I'm going to click on the word handle in the browser, the component, and then the word origin. And that's going to create a rigid joint between them. Now I get asked a lot why I do that. Well, let's just hop in another file. I'm just going to create a new component right off the bat. I'm not going to even save it. If I draw something here, sort of like what we're going to do later on, let's draw a circle. And I'm going to extrude that. When I do it this way, you can see that I can take that circle, this cylinder, and move it anywhere I want to. So I'm going to undo that and get it back to where it needs to go to, revert that back. If I were to roll back to the very end and say assemble and choose an as-built joint between the component and the origin, and then I'll hit OK. So that was the very first thing that I did. Roll this to the end now. Now I can't move that cylinder anymore. So I know that handle, I want it at the origin, so I'm just doing an as-built joint right away so that it can't move. I'll close this out and go back to my original design file. So I'm on my design file. Now, if seeing the joint symbol bothers you, you can just come and turn off the joints folder, or you could turn off the individual joint that we just worked on. I'm going to create a sketch now on the front plane, and we're going to work on drawing the handle shape. So I'm going to start the line command, and I'm just going to kind of come over about maybe that far. I'm going to come up, angle in, angle back out, come straight up. And don't worry about if you're not being, completely perfect on these. Now, oftentimes I'll do what I just did there to close shapes up. I know I want this to be vertical when I'm done, but I drew it kind of as an angled line so that I visually can remember to come back and say, make sure to make that vertical. So I've got that taken care of. That's going to be my handle shape. I didn't do a great job on the sizing, but that's all right. We'll be able to fix all that in a minute. And I'm going to start another line command, and this time I want to draw a center line. Not construction, but center. So I'm going to go to the origin and just drag down, and that's going to make doing my dimensions a little bit easier. So now I'm ready to start adding some dimensions. So I'm going to start the dimension command, and I'm going to click on this center line and this outside dimension, and what I do, it's going to give me the total diameter of the part. So I'm going to say that that's going to be 1.125. And I'll hit enter, and that creates my diameter dimension there. I'll click on that center line again, and I'll click on this upside dimension here, and I'm going to call this 1 inch. So that gives me a 1 inch dimension. You see that things are sort of flipping around. That's okay. I'll just drag this in a little bit, and that's probably where I should have been a little bit more careful on getting the scale right on this. But you can see it wasn't too big of a deal. So I'll dimension this is going to be 0.2 inches, and I'll dimension from here to here, and I'll call this 0.625 inches. Every time I move this around, it's just going to come back with the next dimension, so I should have probably just left it, but you get the idea. I'm going to add one more dimension between here, and I'm going to call this 160 degrees. And then I'm mostly black. The only place that what I have left is to define the total height, and I'm going to do a dimension here, and I'm going to click that, but instead of typing that dimension in, I'm going to call this handle, and I'm going to reference that handle height parameter, and I can hit enter. Now that I've got all my dimensions on here, I can move these around and clean them up should I want to, kind of move them and reorganize them. I usually leave this step for the very end. So there's my original handle design. I'm going to go ahead and finish my sketch. I'm going to go to a home view, click on the Revolve command, and choose my center line as my origin, and I get the basis of my handle so far. Okay, for step 2, I'm going to put a little rounded corner down here, so I'm going to add a sketch, and I'm going to put that sketch on the front plane. And once I get on the front plane, I'm going to slice this. Now I'm seeing wherever the solid body meets the plane that I put my sketch on, but I can't reference any of the lines. If I start the line command, it's not picking up on any of those edges. So I have to project those edges into my sketch first. So from the create menu, I'm going to go to project include. And this time I want to use the intersect option. In the filter over on the right, I want to change it from specified to body. So I'm going to go and change bodies, and I'll just click OK. And now what's happened is Fusion's projected in the outside profile of my handle. And that allows me to go create an arc, a 3-point arc. I'll click on this bottom line and somewhere on this edge and kind of pull down a little bit. I do want to see that tangent symbol there. I don't want a tangent symbol right there. This isn't going to be a perfect tangent on each edge. So I'll add some dimensions now. And the dimension that I want is going to be from here to here is going to be 0.4375. And the radius is going to be 0.75. And it turns fully black and constrained because there's only one arc that can be tangent to this bottom line, have a radius of 0.75 and a distance of 0.4375 away from the edge. Now, a lot of times what we would do is we'd finish the sketch and do a revolve. There are 2 closed profiles that Fusion could choose between, so it can't automatically make the choice for me. So sometimes what I'll do here is I'll go right to the solid tab. Even though I'm still in a sketch, I can still go to the solid tab and choose the revolve command. Now it makes it really easy to grab that profile right there. And then I'll choose my axis, which I could choose the blue axis, or any solid round face will work. And you'll see that'll get my cut, and I'll hit OK. And now I put a little cut around the bottom. To make my life a little bit easier, I usually try to leave fillets and chamfers until the very end, but I want to knock the edge off of this. So I'm going to go to the modify menu and choose the fillet command, click on this edge, and I'm going to put a fillet radius on that edge of 0.25. And we'll hit OK. So my handle's starting to take shape pretty well. I've got some holes that I want to, kind of put some like little grips on the handle. So I'm going to put a sketch up on the top face. And I'm going to do a circle, but I want it to be construction. And I'm going to start from the origin. And this diameter of the circle is going to be, I'm going to go with, I think, 2 inches. So I'll put a 2-inch circle there. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw another circle somewhere on the construction circle, but I don't want this one to be construction. So I'm just going to kind of come over here, drag this out. I'm not going to dimension it. I'm just going to make it that size. The reason I'm not going to make it that size is that the dimension that I've been given is a radius dimension, and I can't add a radius at the same time as I'm creating the dimension. So now I'm going to right click and choose radius. I'll left click to place it and type in 0.5. And now I have my 0.5 inch circle. And I probably need to change the diameter of that a little bit. I don't want that to interfere with the top edge. So I'm just going to call this 2.05. Let's go just a little bit larger. See, now it's outside of that. I'm going to add a horizontal vertical constraint between the origin and the dot in the center. Now that moves it into place. And you can see that everything is lined up where I want it to go. I'll finish my sketch. I'm going to rotate slightly. And I'm going to extrude this circle, pull the direction I want to go until it starts to intersect. And then I'm just going to say I want to go through all. Hit OK. And there's one of the grip cuts that I'm going to have going through my handle right there. Now I'm going to add a couple more fillets on here, at least one more to start out with. So I'm going to fillet this edge, and that fillet radius is going to be 0.05. And now we've got a nice fillet going around there. Okay, I know I want 6 of these grips in total, and now I don't want to do that 6 times. So instead, what I'm going to do is from the create menu, I'm going to choose to do a pattern and a circular pattern. Right now, my feature type or my pattern type is set to faces. I gave the answer away there. I want it to be set to features. So I'm going to go and select features, and I can click those features on the model, or I can select them from the timeline. So I'm going to select mine from the timeline. You can select yours however you want. And again, for the axis, I just need to click on some round face. So I'll click on that edge and tell Fusion that I'd like 6 of those. And we'll hit OK. And now we get the fillet and the cut for the grips going around. I'm going to do one more fillet across this. So I'm going to choose fillet one more time. I'm going to grab this bottom edge right here, and I'm going to call this 0.025 just to put in, just to round that corner off a little bit, and I'll hit OK. And now I get all those edges rounded over. We'll do a different fillet radius. I want to grab this underside, this edge, and this edge. And I'm going to give those a fillet radius of 0.05. And you can see I get a pretty aesthetically pleasing shape right there, I think. And so we'll hit OK. And click on my home button. And really, one of the last things I want to do to this handle is put a hole in it where the shaft is going to go. So I'm going to use the hole command to do that. And I'm just going to click somewhere on this face. Now again, a lot of times what people try to do is they try to click right at the center. And I'm going to encourage you to try to click off of where you want the hole to go so you can easily move the hole where you do want it to go. So I'll just click right there. If I click on the blue dot, a white dot appears in the center. I'll drag those two together, it kind of snaps together. And now I can go start answering some of the questions. I want the bottom of this hole to be flat. So I'm going to set that to be flat. And I want the depth of the hole to be 0.75. I'm also going to set the diameter of this hole to be 0.125. So there's my 0.75 deep. That actually looks a little on the deep side. So let's just come and change this to be like 1/2 inch deep. That should be enough. And I'll hit OK. So that's the basics for the geometry of the handle. Now, one of the things I note a lot too when I'm seeing things out on YouTube or Instagram or whatever is all the models are always gray. Our models don't always have to be gray. We can give them colors. So I'd like to change the appearance of this model by going to the modify menu. And then I want to choose the appearance. When this comes up, I want to go find any appearance that I want. I'm going to use paint for this. And I think I'll go to the glossy. And I can drag on any color that I want to onto my handle. So I'm going to go just grab this yellow color and drag it on. And now you can see that my handle changes color to match. I can give individual faces colors if I want to. So I just switch my selection filter to faces. And if I really wanted to, I could go drag a color onto an individual face rather than having it applied to the entire body. I'll just undo that. I don't want that one face to be colored. So there's our handle. Handle's good. Now it's time to start working on the shaft. So I'm going to activate my top level design again. And this time from the assemble menu, I'll say new component. And this component is going to be named shaft. And I'll hit OK. And now I'm ready to start doing some sketching for this. So I'm going to say that I'd like to create a sketch on the face at the bottom of that hole right there. And once I get that done, I'm going to finish my sketch. And now I can just extrude that. And I'm going to give this a shaft height dimension. And I'll hit OK. So I've just created a relationship between the screwdriver shaft and the handle itself. The handle is driving the geometry so that the shaft always fits in the handle. But again, if I click on the shaft and I drag it, it can move around anywhere it wants to. So I'm going to revert it. And I'm going to go to the assemble menu one more time and do an as-built joint. An as-built joint means that this thing is drawn exactly where I want it to be. There's no need to move it. It is where it needs to be. So I'm just going to click on the thing that can move, and I want to click on the thing that can't move. So I'm going to click on the shaft, and then I'm going to click on the handle, and it's going to add a joint between those two. Now I can't move that around anymore. I want to put kind of a point on the end of the shaft, so I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to put it again on the front plane. And once I get that located on the front plane, I'm going to slice my geometry. And one more time, I'm going to go to the create, project include, intersect, and it should be already set to bodies from my last time. And I'll just click on this and I'll hit OK. Now for this, I'm just going to draw a line from the edge and down. The only place I don't want to be is exactly at the middle of this line. So you see I'm off by a little bit. And I want the distance from the center point of this edge to the end point of that line to be 0.010 of an inch. Now that's a little tricky because there's nothing there that I can dimension to. So what a lot of people I will see do is they'll come and they'll put a point or they'll draw a line or something and put the midpoint. There's maybe a faster way you can do this that's more automated. I'm just going to start the dimension command and I'm going to hold down my shift button as I scrub along this edge. And eventually what will happen is Fusion will find the midpoint. I'm going to click on there and I'm going to click on the endpoint of the line. And I'll set this to be 0.01 and Fusion will automatically add that point to me, for me. 0.01 is what I meant. It'll automatically add that point and put it at the midpoint all in one shot. So I didn't have to do anything to make that happen. It just sort of did. I have one more dimension that I have to do. So I'm going to do a dimension between, I did D for dimension there to get in the dimension command. I'm going to click on that point, and that value is going to be 0.125. And that's going to be fully black and defined. And again, if I want to, I can just go back to the solid tab, choose a revolve command, pick my profile, pick on my outside face, and Fusion's going to rotate that around and cut the end of that. So we're starting to get a little closer to the shape of the screwdriver that I want. I'm going to put a sketch up on this top face. And now what I want to do is I want to draw the cut where this is going to go into the bit. So for this, a couple of different ways we could do this, but I'm just going to kind of draw a triangle. So I'm going to bring a triangle in. When I get to where I want this to end, I'm going to have a radius end on it. I'm going to left click and hold, and I'm going to swing into an arc. Don't worry that our arc is really large compared to what I want right now. And I'll just kind of drag this back out. I know this is going to go down pretty far, so I'm going to drag both sides back out. And then I want a line that connects them. I don't really care if it's horizontal or vertical or anything right now. I'll fix that with a horizontal constraint to get that where I want it to. And I know that the center of this is going to be lined up with the origin. So I'm just going to put that on there now, and I fully expect it. I thought it would have broken a little bit more. It stayed together pretty well. I also know I want a tangent constraint right there. So we're good there. Okay, so I can kind of just start dragging these things around a little bit, get it a little bit more into place. I'm going to add a dimension, so D for dimension between the origin and the bottom line here. And that dimension is going to be 0.875. That moves that around. I can just drag things back if I need to, so I can just grab that whole thing and drag it a little bit closer to where I want it to be. Maybe I'll start adding some dimensions. So I'm going to dimension between the origin, and I want to dimension to the tangent point of this arc. To do that, I'm going to right click and say pick circle arc tangent, and I'm going to click on that arc. And I will say 0.005 is what I want to do for that distance. And I also want the radius of this arc to be 0.005. So I'll click on that. So things are starting to work pretty well. Okay, so I know I want this to be perfectly symmetrical on each side of the green line. So to do that, I'm just going to add another horizontal vertical between the origin dot, and I'm going to hold down my shift button as I scrub across this bottom line until I find the midpoint and click on that. Now, no matter how I change this, it's going to change it symmetrically on both sides. I'll add a dimension, so I did D for dimension. I'll click on this line, and it's going to be 92.5 degrees. And I'll hit enter. And now we'll see that everything is black and fully defined. So that's going to be what's going to make my Phillips head on this shaft. I'm going to finish my sketch, and I'm going to kind of rotate around. Now this time, I want to do the revolve command one more time. I want to click on that profile. Make sure you zoom in and you get this little chunk right there as well. We need both of those for this to work. Actually, we probably only need that one down there, but we're going to use both of them. And now for the axis, I'm just going to click on this edge right here. So lots of people think that the rotation edge also has to be on the model, but any edge will work. So I'll just click on that, and we'll do a full 360 degrees of rotation, and I'll hit OK. And there we get one of the cuts that we're going to do. To complete this shaft, I'm going to say modify. I'm sorry, I'm going to say create pattern and circular pattern. Again, I want to pattern features. I can grab the cut right on the model. I could have grabbed it on the timeline as well. And for the axis, I'll just click on the shaft and tell Fusion that I'd like 4 of these this time, and I'll hit OK. And there we have our Phillips head screwdriver. I don't know if the dimensions for this Phillips head are exactly right, but the methodology of creating the geometry here should work out. So we've got our little Phillips head screwdriver, and that's the way that I go about creating it. Now in the very beginning, you may have remembered that I added some, I'm going to go back and activate my top level design. I added some parameters because I might want to make variations of this. So I'm going to hit save. I can do a file save as. I'm not going to. I'm just going to go change the original. If I went to modify and change parameters, I could come to this handle height and maybe I could change this to be 3. And now if I hit OK, you see that my handle got taller. If I said modify, change parameters one more time, I could go to my shaft height and say that I want that to be 3.5. And I'll hit OK. And now with those, changing those 2 dimensions, I got somewhat the same shape to the screwdriver, but I got different lengths for the shaft and different lengths for the handle, but the rest of the geometry all kind of matches. So if you've ever looked at a screwdriver set, they all sort of have the same profile. They just have different sizes. We could change the diameters. We could do anything we want to at this point. You just have to add more parameters if we wanted to do it in a more automated way. So that wraps up my screwdriver tutorial. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. If you have any other ideas or common objects you'd like to see drawn like this, drop me a line, kevin@mechanicaladvantage.com, and we'll see what we can do for a future video. As always, thanks for watching.